Crafty Ones, Pam Vinny, Pam's Paper Place here, and I thought I'd do a tutorial on this little chunky Woodland Fairy journal. It's a one signature, and it's pretty fluffy, as you can see, but I think it's fun. So, I thought we'd start with a cover. I don't decorate the cover until the very last, but I thought we'd work on making the cover first and then see where we can go from there. So, supplies that you'll need will be your outside fabric. I like a little thicker fabric, like an upholstery type fabric. That, and then some fleece or polyfill. I use this from Hobby Lobby. It's like a small bag, 45 by 60, or whatever you have, batting or even felt, or just something to give it a little squish. Okay, I just threw that across the room so I'd have room on my desk. Okay, and then I like to put a little heavier cardstock, and then the next layer will be some more fabric. So you'll just need like an upholstery or whatever, fabric. You're going to have a batting, and you're going to have a thicker cardstock. Cardstock. Okay, and then you're going to have one other piece of fabric. So 2 pieces of fabric, batting, and cardstock. And let's see here. So the measurements will be about 12.5 by 10 down. So, and you can kind of cut it later too, which I think I'm just going to cut off, see this little binding here, this little edging. I'm going to cut that off. And what I think I'm going to do is use it for I already cut off the other ones, the other sides. I think I'm going to use this as a tie for my journal. So I'll probably sandwich it in to the layers. Okay, so this is about like 12.5, about 10. I'll cut it down in just a bit. Okay, and then we're going to need our next layer, your batting. Let's see, I want another piece of this trim, or you don't have to add your tie now, but I mean, you can add ribbon, you can add whatever you want here. Okay, that's a little longer, but I'm thinking, will that be enough to tie it shut? I think so, at least once. Okay, so then you're going to do your batting. We'll worry about that later. A batting, approximate, and then you can trim it later. Oops. Okay. Then your cardstock, which is, when it's folded, 6 inches by 9.5 down. We'll add that. Then we'll add our beautiful fabric. And one of my favorite tools is like a flat iron. And then if you have something that needs to be ironed, you can just take it. You can use it for ribbon carefully, if it's satin. You don't want to burn it. But that will just take a little bit. Oops, I should have turned it up higher. And you can just takes a little bit of it out. It creases out. Doesn't have to be perfect, but that's kind of a stubborn crease, isn't it? Okay, so from that point, we are going to start gluing a bit and then we'll sew around. So I think I'm going to just add these here. I wish I had one that was a little longer. But I think I'll just tie it. You know, I'll just tie it once. I think that should work. So I think what I'm going to do first of all, find my center, and I'm just going to sew the edges of this here. All right. I just sewed these on to the wrong side. Now we can lay down our batting, and I will just put some fabric tack on that underneath here. Don't have a lot, but hopefully it'll be enough. Maybe I might even use just a tiny bit of hot glue. You know, if you have a thicker fabric, it shouldn't show through. So let's fabric tack the batting to this fabric. Okay, the next one, fold your paper here, and I'm just going to add hot glue because it seems to be working pretty good. So let's do this step. Okay, next layer is going to be your inside layer. Let's use some Fabri-Tac Fabri-Fix. This fabric's a little thinner. I don't want to feel the hot glue on it. So, okay, and then we're going to trim it up. Oh no, I'm getting this everywhere. Okay. I'm a kind of a crafter that doesn't plan ahead, so this is a little bit challenging for me because I'm trying to think ahead with the tutorial. All right, let's trim it up. And okay, originally our cover was 12.5 by 10. So let's, oh, I'm gonna say, trim it just a little bit. So let's go trim it up. And you're going to have things sticking out, so it doesn't have to be exact with this kind of journal because you're going to have leaves and things. Trim it to your cardstock the best you can. You can kind of feel it or pull it up. I'll do these layers first. So let's just trim around all of the edges around the cardstock. Okay, I keep flipping and turning it over until I trim up all the edges. Careful you don't cut your little tie. And doesn't have to be perfect. And then you didn't have to glue up to the edges because we're going to stitch that. Okay. And then I need to trim this up, and then we will sew the edges. All right, this is what we have right now. I glued that down. So here is the beginnings of our journal. And then also I'm going to put on the edge, if you have some green burlap or some other trim you want to use. And then I'll be adding that on once I sew. So we're going to just stitch around, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I think I'll do a straight stitch, and then I think I'll zigzag it also. So let's go on to that step. Okay, so I did a straight stitch, and then I went back and I did a zigzag around it. And you want it to look rustic, so that's what I have. I like it. It's got a nice feel to it. And we'll add your trim or whatever later, because there's a lot of things that are coming out. So I'm not sure exactly how I want this to go. And then I'll have leaves and things here too. So I'm going to do that later. Okay, so how cute is it? Very cute. I like it. So the next step will be choosing your papers. So find a digital kit that you like. I'll put a link, if I can remember, to, I know some are Vectoria Designs and some are Musings by Nikki. If you want to look at their Etsy store, they have some digitals, or use whatever digitals you have. So get your different papers, you know, if you have any textured papers, you know, lined, if you have some paper like this, just different papers that you think you might like. Maybe Edith Holden. And let's see how many pages I have. Hold on. Okay, I counted. I have 18 pages, and that will make a chunky one. If you don't want to make it that chunky, do 15. Okay, and then just, you know, you can coffee dye your papers now, and just get them all together. And if you want some longer that flip out, you know, you don't have to cut them, you know, to the very edge. You can leave some and fold it. So I believe it's 6 by 8.5. Or 8. Let's see, I think I have different. I have the 8. I've got some 8.5. So because, you know, our cover will have things sticking out, you can make it different various pages. So just get together Digis, you know, if you have some that look like faux, you know, with leaves in it, like that. Just get all that together, and you can coffee dye your papers now. And you'll want to have some thicker pages. Like I always have the first page, a thicker page. There's another one too. So there's 2 thick ones. I mean, this is thicker. So maybe 3, maybe 4 thicker pages. So let's get those together, and then we will sew the signatures in. All right, I have my papers picked out, and they measure, they're various because some are 8, some are less going down, and then they're about 5.5 to 6, because I have different things that'll be, you know, coming out of the pages. And I will need to trim down my Edith Holden, maybe fold it back or whatever fits between folded 6 across by about 8.5 down, 8.5 various. And I have about 18, 19, including short pages. And this will be folded, so. And then I'm going to have I'll do this later, because like I said, I'll do my cover later. I'll put that down, etc. So, yeah, let's get your papers together. And on some of them, like this one, I'm going to stitch this down because I just have a short page. So that was folded, and I'll stitch along there. And I will stitch this together before I sew them in. So I'll stitch that page together. You know, just put your various papers in, trim them down, and then I'm going to put, after I trim my pages down, before I sew it, I'm going to do this like I did in here, put a butterfly in the middle. So before we sew our signatures, let's get a butterfly. These are from the dollar store if you want to do this. Let me get my butterfly. Here's my butterfly that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to fold it a bit in half at his body. And then I will glue it here, and then in the middle when I sew, it'll come up through there. But before we do that, let's also do some sewing on the edges. Like I did here. I took some, take your fibers, get whatever fibers, and I just, as I sewed, I put that down, and then later you can add a butterfly. So I just sew down with that. So you might want to do that. What else do you need to do before you sew in your signatures? A lot of things you can add later, like you can glue that in later. Just trying to see what. Oh, and then you could sew a little cluster to the top there with those fibers here. I just glued this on. Let's see what else we might want to put on. I did sew a little cluster here, the zigzag, of some tulle and lace. I sewed this little, it's just fabric, a little strip. Anything else? Let's just go through and see. Oh, I did do the back page here. I just sewed zigzag, but you could always glue that on later too. I did, you know, here. So whatever you want to sew first. I mean, sometimes you can glue. This was glued, so I don't have to worry about that. So, and then I did sew this on, but you could probably even glue it on. Did I stitch it? Yeah, I did stitch that on. So wherever you think you might want to stitch it on, do that now before you sew on your signatures. So you can add it later. Like I took this strip of paper, this little paper here, and then I stitched the fibers to it and then glued it down. So you can always find a way to do it if you don't, you know, stitch it. Okay, so I'm going to do that stitching. And then you can look at different tutorials on how to sew in a signature. And I think that will be all for today. I'm going to cut things down and show it to you once it's been sewn. And once the papers here that you're going to join are sewn. Here's something else I did before stitching in my signatures. I have a big envelope that's been dyed. This can be, you know, one of the things you add. And I'm going to cut this open. And then here, I'm going to stitch this down here. So then when you open it up, this will be sealed, but this will be open so you can put things in there. So that's something else that I will do. Okay, so I just stitched this down with a decorative stitching, this paper. And then I will be gluing this down and then just cutting this so that this will be an opening. So that's an idea for your page. So I sewed and then I just, you know, glued this part down. So when you put that in, and then you glue this down. You will now have that will be glued shut. And now your pocket will be here when you put it in the book. Okay, here's another idea for a page that I did. I think I did it a little differently, but here's your paper. And I have a smaller paper that's, well, it can be whatever, 4, 3.5, 4. And I folded it in half. So then what I'm going to do is sew and then get an envelope. I'm going to sew, I'm going to put these together like that. And then I'm going to put this here and make sure that is going to be able to fold. I'm going to sew down here. And then this will be glued, that will be glued, so that this will be a tuck. And then here will be a tuck. Then I'll glue that down. So right now, what I'm going to do, and what you could do too to make it easier, glue these 2 points down first. Take it to your sewing machine and stitch that down. I'll just show you this. So let's just glue this down. Like so. And then here will be your tuck. Now we're just going to go and stitch down here. Actually, you're going to have to stitch on this side because you want that to be open. So you're going to want to stitch on this envelope flap side. Okay, we're just going to finish this up, and I'll be sewing in the signatures. So what we have here is this, that sew down here. I ripped a little bit there, but that's okay. And then this is going to be a tuck. I'll glue that down. And then this, I'm going to cut this or tear it because I want this little elf or fairy to show. I can use this paper someplace else. So I can just glue that down a little bit, and then this is what you'll have on the other side. This will be glued here for a tuck. So you've got kind of a cool page there. So other than cutting it down and maybe sewing a few little fibers, I think we're done for this session, and we'll see you on the next one.